think you got to take a look at the digital world. It's fundamentally different in many ways to a traditional business. In the digital world, your consumer is king. You know, we talked about this, and it was a trite word that we talked about in the 80s, the 90s, and the early part of the 21st century. Today, the consumer owns it. So ultimately what happens is you need about speed, flexibility, and adaptability. Things happen so much quicker. You know, they talked this morning on about kind of websites that sprung up from nowhere. We see things on YouTube that in a matter of hours can have hundreds of thousands and millions of hits. The world is changing incredibly quickly, so that's a key element. So what we start to think about is, then you have to apply on top of that normal management disciplines, because at the end of the day, it's about management. We think about scarcity breeds clarity. In our business, anywhere where we think we have enough resources invested, we have it. And then when we have it again. Because what we want to do is we want to eliminate any form of overhead that is kind of adding on to projects. And the project done quickly, and we don't want overhead. The other thing we do, and I think Dylan talked about it this morning, is we celebrate failure. Because it's failure, we're taking mistakes. And we kind of, let me draw an analogy, kind of going back as the Romans were conquering the world. They sent out scouts in 3 or 4 different directions, and when a scout didn't come back, they knew not to head in that direction. So a fast death resulted in where to go. The same thing happens from an internet perspective. You have to pilot. You've got to test, and test rapidly. And once you get the feedback, you need to kill it quickly if it's not going anywhere, adjust it, or redeploy the resources to what is doing well. The other thing we think about is, ubiquity first, revenue later. The ability in the digital world is it's a simplified distribution model, so you will figure out quickly whether there is usage or adoption. Once you get that level of ubiquity, you will then understand how your customer is interacting with your potential product, and then you build a revenue model around it. The traditional model of starting with your revenue model and your business model looking for customers is somewhat less relevant on the internet, in the digital world. It's get customers first. Hire great people. A's hire A's and B's hire C's is kind of a truism that we use. The best thing you can do is to get the best people. And then kind of following on what Martin talked about, it is critical that as a country we produce the best, not just average. In the world, across a 6.4 billion population today, if you kind of look at standard deviation across any skill base, the likelihood is we don't have a large enough population to have a significant impact on that in volume terms, so we need to win on quality. And the only way you win in quality is with the best. And it's not the best by your standards, it's the best in the world standards. It's kind of like, don't play League of Ireland football, play Champions League. And when you apply that sort of maxim throughout your business, it starts to put a kind of a focus on excellence. Other things we try and do is be completely transparent. So we do things that I found incredibly difficult when I walked into Google 5.5 years ago. We do what we call objectives and key results. Larry and Sergey will basically roll out the quarterly objectives of the company on the first day of the quarter. And probably by the 3rd day of the quarter, they'll be cascaded right down, because it's not a pleasant place if you're a manager kind of working upon your key objectives for that quarter by the time you get into week 2. Ultimately, how you measure people. We're very, very transparent. We measure our whole team on every 90 days. We do 360-degree feedback with detailed conversations every 180 days. And then the feedback that you give on your manager is then published to the whole company. So it's all about transparency, because we're hiring great people. Those people want to know what's happening. They want reality. What you then do is you actually stretch your curve, so you actually provide 90% of your great rewards to your 10% top performers, or something like that. It's a meritocracy. You're not in the business of actually spreading the rewards like jam. You look for great people and actually and reward them. Other things we try and do is kind of brainstorming, be free from constraints, challenge the model. Brainstorming is good, but it's somewhat dangerous as well, because brainstorming kind of lock yourself into an existing model. What we want to do is to throw models out the window. And then no matter what happens, you just need to be relentless in just what I call brutality of execution. Your execution has got to be world class. You cannot be in a situation where you're thinking about something, talking about something. You need to move from concept to reality, because the feedback you're getting from your customer comes so quickly that if you're kind of getting stacked up and trying what you react to or what you don't react to, you'll create a mess. One thing then around this that this industry or digitalization creates is more data than anybody's ever seen before. So what happens is when you actually have, when data is abundant, what we say is intelligence is the key. What do you do with that data? And what starts to happening is marketing becomes a new science, or the new finance. Because what happens is you have abundant data about your users. You can actually segment in a variety of different ways, and you can experiment, and you get that real-time feedback. And we do believe that the sexiest jobs in Google over the next 5 to 10 years will be the statisticians, because ultimately they're getting to play with the data and ultimately configure the types of things that we're doing. That then comes back to a complete need for a society that wants to be a predominant leader in the digital economy, to have the best mathematicians in the world. Not just average, but the best. And then what you do, you also hope for luck. You hope for a good wind behind you. You make the decisions. When you make a bad decision, you just basically write it off, move forward, and accept the fact that as part of doing business, you make bad decisions. Learn from it, don't repeat it. But once you know something's wrong, kill it as fast as possible. Because otherwise you get this drag-along effect, and everybody's walking around the building thinking about that project that should be dead, and everybody's winking and nodding. The best thing you do is kill it, take everybody out of there, and then move them on onto a different project as quickly as possible. They're the types of things that we do. I think it's about speed.